to be considered that you're carrying on Shabbos, it has to be any work that you do on Shabbos has to be that you have awareness. There's the idea, there's a knowledge that you know what you're doing. But if you have no idea that you're carrying, it's not considered carrying. So you actually didn't transgress at all. Okay. Now, let's discuss what happens if you realize you're carrying on Shabbos. So in order to understand what we're going to explain, all the technical details, if this happened, you do this, if this happened, you do that, it's important to understand what's behind the halachas. So the halacha is, we started discussing another class, you're not allowed to carry from one domain to another domain, from a private domain to a public domain to private domain. And then there is a separate prohibition that cannot carry 4 cubits in a public domain. So within a public domain, you're not allowed to carry 4 cubits. It's about 6 feet. So it's 2 separate transgressions. Carrying from private to public. The definition of carrying from private to public, or public to private, means that you lift it up over here, you lift it up over here. I lift this up Shabbos, and I walk down the street, then I walk outside, and I put it down, or I stop. That's considered that I completed the melacha. If I walk outside and I don't stop, I don't stop and I don't put it down, then I have not completed the melacha. It's still prohibited, but I did not transgress. Min ha'Torah, biblically, I did not transgress because I did not complete the melacha. And the same thing is also talking about carrying 4 cubits in the public domain. It means if you're in the street and you pick something up and you walk with it and you stop, you completed the melacha. If you did not stop, then you have not completed the melacha. Now, with that in mind, we'll start explaining. So what happens if you realize that you're carrying? So it depends if from when you left your house until you realize you're carrying, you didn't stop at all. So let's say you're outside and you're walking. So first of all, when you're outside, don't check your pockets. You're supposed to check your pockets before Shabbos. But if you're outside and you're thinking, one second, maybe I have something in my pocket. I'm not sure if there's something in my pocket. Let me check. Don't do that while you're in the street. I mean, if you know you can, you know you can. We're going to deal with it. But maybe, I'm not sure. Maybe there's something in my pocket. Don't check your pockets in the street. Another thing is, if let's say you realize that you're carrying, first thing is, regardless of any other condition, regardless of from when you left your house, you stopped or not, you never stop. So if you realize that you're carrying something, you don't, first thing is, don't stop walking. Continue walking. Now, what do you do? That depends on if from when you left your house until you realize that you're carrying, did you make any stops or not? So now we're getting to details now. You left your house, you're in the street, you realize you're carrying. Oh my gosh, I'm carrying something. So what do? Now, so first thing is, don't stop walking. If you realized while you're on a stop sign, that's great. That's amazing. I mean, that's like the best place to remind yourself that you're carrying something, because then you just take it out of your pocket and you put it on the floor. You're not doing any action. You're not doing any malachim. Because you understand, the definition of carrying is you lift it up in private domain, you put it on a public domain, or you stop. So you're ready, it's done already. You began carrying in the private domain, and you stop in the public domain. Malachis, it's completed, it's done. Nothing to do about it. You just put it down. But if you realize while you're carrying, now it depends. So first we said, don't stop. Make sure you don't stop. Continue walking. And even if you're not sure what to do yet, continue walking. You have time to think what to do. Now, if since you left your house until this point, you did not make any stops, there's no stop signs, nothing, you've been walking the whole time, So now what you want to do is as follows. So first of all, if you have something to put it on, if you have this, it's not common, but if you have there's certain places you can actually, while you're walking, put it down, and it's okay. Now that doesn't make any sense because if you put it down, you complete the malacha, right? What does it mean while you're walking? There are certain places that if you put it down, you're not completing the malacha. Because the malacha is to lift up in a private domain and put down in a public domain. There's certain areas in the public domain that it's not really a public domain. It's what's called a mokin petur. You ever heard that expression? Mokin petur, a place that you're exempt. Mokin. Mokin petur. Petur, place that you're exempt. And that is, if you find, let's say, there are some places, so there's at the corner of Montgomery and Brooklyn, if you walk there, and one of the corners you'll notice there's like beams, metal beams coming out. They put into the ground because of cars that had accidents and drove right into the house that's at the corner, not into the house, but into the whatever the garden. So they have these big heavy poles, metal beams that are in the ground. So if they are 40 inches high, but they're less than a foot by a foot, we say, yeah, let's say a foot by a foot, not more than a foot by a foot, 12 by 12 inches. That's 4 tvachim in the halachic language, less than 4 hands. 40 inches high. It should be 40 inches high. 40 inches high, and it should be less than it should be, the width should be less than a foot. I think over there it's like that. It's very rare. Also, you have to find, if you have to find it right, or if it's close to you. If you have to walk 4 cubits, it's best not, because now you're walking extra, you're carrying in a public domain, which is not proper. So if you happen to be walking, you realize, and while you're walking, you're next to those poles that are 40 inches high and less than a foot by foot, or if it's exactly a foot by foot, it's also fine. It's also good. You're gonna drop more, a little more could be is okay. Then you can just put it down there. Now you have not completed any malacha because you lifted up in a private domain and you didn't put it down in a public domain, you put it down in what's called a mokin petur. But that's not common. Usually, you're not going to be close to such a place. So then, if you did not stop walking since you left your house, then what you're supposed to do is you should be walking back to where you came from without stopping. Make a U-turn. It's not a U-turn, you can do whatever, but just keep on walking, turn around, and go back to where you came from. Make sure you don't make any stops. So you don't complete the malach. Because technically, if someone walks out of his house carrying something, and it doesn't stop and walks right back in, according to the Torah, he has not transgressed because he has not completed the malacha. Yeah.
What if you stop because you want to cross and they were like cars?
That's called a stop.
It's called stop.
That's called stopping. That's what I'm saying. If since when you left your house, you already made a stop, so we're going to discuss that soon. So we're discussing, since you left your house, you have not made any stops. There was no red lights. You kept on walking the whole time. So now what you want to do is you want to continue walking. You want to walk back to a private domain. You don't want to put it down in the public domain. And preferably it should be the private domain from where you came from. So you want to come back from where you came from. So like this, nothing should be accomplished with your action. So you're coming back to where you came from. And here's another issue. You're coming back to your house, to your apartment. Now, many times when you're coming back to your house or apartment, you have to stop in front of the house before you get in, open up the door. And depending on where it is, that could be considered still the public domain. It depends. Depends on the house. If it's some houses, you go up the steps, it's already like a private domain. There's like a porch. Sometimes it's right off the house. Like if you have like, for example, houses on we always use example. The houses on Montgomery between, if you're familiar with the street circle, Montgomery between Albany and Troy, you have a lot of houses that are right off the street. There's one side that you go up the steps, and the other side is the houses are right, you come right out into the street. So over there, if you live there and you come in front of your house, usually, unless there's something set up over there, you're in a public domain. So you can't walk in straight to your house. You're gonna have to stop in front of the house to open the door. So over there it gets a little complicated, and unless you have unless you can wait till someone opens the door, there's not much you can do. You can't really walk back into your house without stopping in the public domain. So then in that situation, you won't go back to your house, you go back to another private domain, let's say to show wherever you're planning to go or anywhere else, then you can walk straight into the private domain. Like this, you don't have to put it down. You're not completing the malacha, putting it down in the public domain. But even when you come back to the private domain, whether going back to your house or to the new place they're going to, there's another thing that you want to do, and that is to minimize the transgression. You don't want to put it down in the regular way, because even though you're not completing the malacha, but still you're doing something. There's some completion of an action here. So what you want to do is you want to drop it down. You want to drop it out of your hand, not in a regular way. So you want to like overhand, like like this, or like that. You want to put it down, not in a regular way, because the definition of malach is lifting up in one domain, putting down another domain, and when you're putting it down, there is a completion of an action there, even though you're not completing a malacha, because you lift it up in a private domain, putting it down in a private domain, but still you want to avoid any part of the malacha, and part of the malacha is putting it down. Yeah.
What happens if you're walking to shul and you realize that you're carrying and you're like, I don't know, a few steps from shul or something? Can you not just, is it not just easier to like walk into the shul and then do that?
Okay, so the question is a good question. You're walking, let's say a 15-minute walk, and you haven't stopped.
Yeah.
The whole discussion is that you haven't stopped since you left your house. Okay? And now you walked such a long distance, and now I'm telling you walk all the way back to your house. So what do you have to walk back to your house? It's still better to walk back to your house. That's still the preferred way. Do we obligate you if it's gonna like so far and so difficult? This is the better way. I mean, you're still not transgressing. You're not completing the malacha, the action, when you're walking into the show and putting it down there. But better is to come back to where you came from. So nothing was accomplished with your malacha. That is the better way to do it.
Thank you.
Now, what if you have stopped since you left your house? You made some stops. And now you're reminding yourself while you're still walking. Not when you stopped, because if you remind yourself when you stopped, just put it down. But now we're not going to tell you to go back to your house, because being that you already stopped, you already completed the malacha. Now you started walking again. So now you started a new malacha because you started walking again in the street. Right? You get it? You stopped, you completed the malacha, you started again. Now it's like you began a new malacha in the public. It's like you lifted up the public domain. Yeah.
But if you like have stopped but realize while walking,
You have stopped and you realize while you're walking.
yeah,
That's what we're discussing now. You
No,
have
but-
stopped.
you keep walking. So you had stopped.
You
but-
realize while you're walking, but you already stopped previously.
Yeah.
That's what we're discussing now.
Oh, okay, I think
Right.
that you just stop and
Right.
that's when
No, if you realize while you're stopping, just put it down.
it's.
So now you realize while you're walking, but you already stopped before. So now there's no point in going back to your house, because then you're just going to complete the malacha. Now you lifted up in a public domain, because you stopped and started walking again, so you lifted up again. Now you're gonna go back to your house and complete the malacha. Doesn't make any sense, right? Doesn't make any sense. So over here now, so what should you do? And dropping out of your hand, you also, if you're also doing something because you can't carry 4 cubits in a public domain, right? So any way you do it, you're transgressing, but there's no option. We can't, hypothetically speaking, if you continue walking the whole Shabbos, but we're not going to do that to you. Halacha doesn't demand that. Even though theoretically, if it's close to the end of Shabbos, it might be a good idea, but it doesn't. It's not brought down such a thing. So here, the best option is just to put it down as soon as possible to minimize being involved in just transgression, walking. Just put it down as soon as possible. But now you really want to make sure that you put it down not in a regular way. You throw it overhand in a backhanded way. You drop it in an irregular way. So when you do the malacha not in a regular way, then it minimizes the transgression because it brings it down from being biblically prohibited to rabbinically prohibited. So while you're walking, you drop it out of your hand, you get like this, and you throw it over your shoulder like that. So you're minimizing the transgression.
Okay, that makes me feel a lot better, because I've done this, and I was like freaking out, like, did I do like the right thing? And I think I did. So I didn't throw, I mean, I like sort of like shoved it. I realized I was carrying gloves.
Throwing it is not, we're not saying to throw, not throwing.
Yeah.
Throwing is a regular way.
I
People
mean,
throw a
this didn't know
ball.
anything, so I'm just glad that I knew that I stopped like in front of the door, but already was stopping, so I just continued. And then when I realized, I was like, oh my gosh. So I like continued walking, and then I just went. But then the
Okay,
next
but
day
you just want to make sure you do it in
Next
a
time, yeah,
backhanded way, like this, like this, like that.
Yeah.
This might be,
I keep on showing like that, but actually it doesn't have to be over the shoulder. The main thing is that it's a backhanded way. Like you put things down like this, right? So your regular way is like that. You put it like that. No, it's not. That's the main. I think
So, like,
over the shoulder maybe is a
Is
little.
it better to like continue walking and like while you're walking, like, cause you don't wanna stop and then go like that, right? Or go.
You have to continue walking. You're not supposed to
Yeah.
stop.
Yeah.
We're saying you're not supposed to stop. While you're walking, that's the point. While you're walking, you're throwing it. If you stop,
But if you're
if
walking.
you're going to stop, you're completing the malacha, you're completing the action.
But like, if you're walking, then like, are you supposed to walk a little weird, like backwards, kind of? Cause if you're looking behind you, then it's gonna be on the, like, the sidewalk, like, right there. So I was trying to, like, not have my gloves, like, go, I mean, the next day it was like raining anyway, so they got really late anyway, but like, if you're gonna come back with your item
Yeah.
and you're throwing it behind you, it would be better to like turn your body, I guess, you could like throw it at least like on like the grass or something.
Yeah, you can do that. You could turn your body a little bit so it just goes to the side. 1 second, be careful. Not on the grass, it might be a private domain.
Oh my gosh.
It depends if it's elevated. Sometimes if there's a ledge and it goes up, huh?
Like, if I'm walking down President and it's like the grass towards the street, that's private, that's a public, right?
It's not about private property. If it's flush with the street, it's considered part of the street. If it's flat, sometimes you have, let's say, if you're walking, let's say, on Empire, the house is on Empire between Albany and Shirley. You have gardens in front of the house. Then you have it's elevated. There's like a brick wall over there. I remember I once saw someone walking on Shabbos with a child, and the child didn't want to walk anymore. So he wanted to put the child somewhere. So he picked up the child and put the child on the ledge of the garden, right? It goes up to the garden, it's like a brick wall. But he didn't realize that if it's elevated 40 inches, then it becomes a private domain. If it has a certain width. The pole we spoke about before didn't have that width, that's why it's not a private domain. So it's elevated 40 inches, and it's more than about 13 inches wide, it becomes a private domain. So you pick up your child in a public domain and you pick him up and put him, because he doesn't want to walk. So you want to put them somewhere. So now you're picking up from a public domain, you're putting them down in a private domain. You're doing a real malacha there. So you're saying putting it into the garden, what kind, depends on the garden. If it's flush with the street, okay, but if it's elevated,
Right.
it depends how high it is, it could be considered a private domain.
But
Yeah.
what if we find, like, for example, I don't know, like she say gloves or something that I can put it while walking? Like in my hand.
Oh, good question. So what happens if while you're walking, you realize you have gloves in your pockets? Now, so what you want to do is while you're walking, you want to put on your gloves. Can you do that? And the answer is no. Because when you're putting on your gloves, that's considered putting it down, because that's where the gloves belong. So that's actually completing the malacha. You can't do that. Now,
For that, I was like, I'm not gonna love it.
now, again, if you stopped since you left your house, and what do you do with your gloves? You said throw it out in a backhanded way. Now, after you do that, you can pick it up and put it on. Why not? You get it? While you're in one place, you can do whatever you want. If you could stop. In general, people know they have to.
Oh, hack.
Yeah. What happens if your scarf falls off, your hat falls off, your whatever? You stop. You see those men in the street, Shabbos, the hat goes flying off. So what do? They have to make sure they put on the hat, not to walk. Put on the hat and adjust it. By habit, if you're not thinking, you grab the hat and while you're walking, you're putting it on. So in one place, there's no problem. You can put things down, pick it up, you can pick up a child, hold a child, put it down. So it's not that's not a problem. Now, sometimes it could be that we're saying that since you left your house, you stopped, so then you should just drop it in a backhanded way. What's if it's an expensive item? You don't want it to get lost or stolen. So what do? So over here, there's different things you can do. Some of the things aren't so practical, but we'll go through all the steps. The one thing that's brought down is that if it's an expensive item, so what you can do is, while you're walking, you could hand it to a goy, that a goy will take it from your hand. That's not practical. Like this, you're not putting it down, and you're letting a non-Jew take it from your hand, and someone that you trust that's going to bring it to your house. That's not so practical. Yeah.
In that scenario, you give it to a non-Jew, they're holding
But you
it.
can't put it into his hand while he stopped, because then you're completing the malacha. So it's like once you put it into his hand and he's in one place. If you put it into his hand while he's walking, that's okay. Okay, but I'm explaining the halacha the way it is, but it's not
Put it in his
practical.
hand while he's walking. Okay, but then,
Yeah, because
both
if
stop.
he's in one place, you complete the action by putting it into his hand.
but then you both stop. Are you allowed to take it back and put it on? Cause
You
you're
both
stopped?
stopped. You're putting it to his hand while he's walking, let's say.
Yeah.
So
And then you
hypothetically
stop it
speaking, you
and
have a guy, you have a relation,
Yeah.
and while you're walking, he's walking, and you tell him, don't stop, and you
Yeah.
put it to his hand, and say, no.
Yeah.
Okay, now, yeah.
Then can you, at the light, cause you're stopped, can you take it back from him and put it back on? If let's say if you're walking.
Oh, yeah. Very good. Not. You mean watch what's in your pocket, let's say.
Yeah.
Yeah, but in this, it's not so practical. You find someone while you're walking.
I'm just thinking.
Now the others, yeah. Now, assuming that let's just get one. Assuming it won't get damaged when you drop it out, you're saying a watch. Assuming it won't get damaged when you drop it out of your hand, if you don't have a non-Jew next to you, just do what we said before, drop it out of your hand in a backhanded way. But now you don't want it to get lost. You don't know anyone to steal it. So now what you're supposed to do is, the best thing is to stand and watch it till after Shabbos. And if that's too difficult and it's an expensive item, then you can ask a non-Jew to carry it for you to your house.
Wait, why isn't it like the glove where you can just stop and put them on?
Oh, right, I wasn't thinking about that angle, you're right, a watch, I'm thinking about an expensive item, you're right, anything that you could put on, correct, yeah. Anything you could put on, yeah, put it on. Now, if it's an expensive item that's gonna get damaged if you drop it out of your hand, so then you have to, it's a little more complicated, I'm not sure about that. If you're able to find a non-Jew, and you won't have to walk that much, then again, that's what you need to do. But if it's an expensive item, that if you drop it out of hand, it's going to get damaged, have to look into that more. It could be, I'm not sure how that works. Yeah.
She's not here now, but that Haley, she was asking in the beginning of carrying, like this happened to her before, where like her glasses lens pop out while walking, and like she needs them. I don't know if they're expensive or they're just very necessary.
Lenses pop out.
Yeah, that's happened to her. I mean, when she's back, she can ask, but I just.
There's a double issue. The issue is
Oh,
you
just
can't,
putting it
it's
back.
fixing, it's issue in itself. Can't really push back the lens into your glasses because you're fixing, and even if you're putting it lightly, you're not allowed because you might put it in tight. So that seems like an issue. Well, even forget about the street.
So if it does, that's the situation where like, if you need it, just to stand by it the rest of Shabbos.
So it's an expensive item.
Yeah.
So in other words, it pops out in the street and it falls on the ground and it didn't crack, let's say, it's still good.
Mhm.
So you have to ask, yeah, you have to ask an non-Jew to carry it back for you. That's the way to do it. If you don't have a non-Jew available, then the next option is to carry it less than 4 cubits and stop. Carry less than 6 feet, stop. Because the transgression is to be carried for 6 feet.
What's that for? Sorry, if you can't stop? Or if you have
If
to-
it's an expensive item, no. First thing is, if you realize that you're carrying, you have to drop it in a backhanded way. But you don't want to leave it there. It's going to get stolen. It's expensive. Step 1 is non-Jew. If you don't have a non-Jew, then you do it yourself for less than 4 cubits, less than 6 feet. And what do you mean less than 6 feet? Are you going to want to continue walking? Less than 6 feet means you stop. Every less than 6 feet. Less than feet, you stop. Then you start again and you stop until you get home. Now, even better than that, but that's going to be a little very uncomfortable, is that when you say you stop less than 6 feet, it's better to sit down because you want it to be considered that to be a real stop. Some say you should sit down with the item. Can you imagine? So, but it's not obligatory to do it that way. Teves says this is better because then some say a stop is that you're actually sitting down. Just because you stop in one place, so that's even better if one can do that. Now, even if you walk now, in general, you're not allowed to do that. Walk less than 6. In other words, if it's not an expensive item, you can't do such a thing because it's still prohibited rabbinically. Because an expensive item will allow you to walk less than 6 feet, stop. Less than 6 feet, stop. But that doesn't help you. That doesn't allow you to bring it into the house. Because you're still carrying from a public domain to private domain.
Then what do you do?
So what do you do? So with there, there's different ways you can do it. One way is, again, if you have a non-Jew, maybe now you will find a non-Jew available. But if not, and if you leave it outside, it's going to get, maybe now if you leave it outside the door, it's safe, maybe. Or if it's still not safe, then you can bring it in not in a regular way. So you throw it in an irregular way, a backhanded way, you throw it into the house. There could be another way I have to look up again, that if you do it together with someone else, you stick your hand inside and so, but I have to look up again which way is better. Because when you do a malacha with someone else, you're breaking it up. Like if you stick your hand from public domain into private domain, and you have something in your hand. You're not allowed to do it in general, I'm talking about in this case. And then someone takes it from your hand, so no one did a malacha. So that's also an option. We have to look up which one is better, doing that or throwing it in a backhanded way. I think a backhanded way is preferred because that's I think that's preferred because it's not you're not doing it in a regular way. Irregular way is usually the best way to do things.
What's that scenario? With somebody else, what was that?
We're saying you have to get it into your house. It's an expensive item. It's going to get stolen. So till your house, less than 4 cubits, less than 6 feet. How do you get it into your house? So you throw it in a backhanded way. But it could be another way doing it with someone else. Together.
You haven't stopped.
This is if you haven't stopped since you left your house, then you just continue walking until you get back. Because you stopped since you left your house, now we want you to throw it out of your hand in the public domain. But now it's an expensive item. So what do you do? So that's the way to do it. First with a guy, no guide, no less than 4 cubits, less than 6 feet. But how you get into your house? It's still going from public to private. So you do it in an irregular way. You had a question before? It's clear.
Yeah, just, what's the definition then of stopping? Is it like stopping for like?
Good. That's a very good question. Stopping. What is stopping? So before the question was by a stop sign. Yeah, that is considered stopping. But what is the definition? If you stopped because you had something stuck in your shoe or something, is that considered stopping? Not necessarily. So let's start with the language of the Alter Rebbe. Alter Rebbe says if someone stops because they have to adjust something, adjust their package, let's say.
We're stopping in front of the dorm because we're waiting for more people to. Every single college is like. So I'm like, okay, we're all just gonna be that second category. We just like drop it where we are. All day. Right, that's not a porch. But because it's always. Start walking a little way.
So if you're stopping, which it says, let's say you're carrying something. Someone's carrying a Shabbos package, and he stops. He has a knapsack, and he has to stops because it's not sitting well. He has to adjust it. Yeah, that's not called stopping because he's just stopping to adjust the package that he's holding. Stopping is he's stopping to rest. So based on that, I'm saying if you're stopping, let's say, because you can't walk, so he's in your shoe or something. So then that's not called stopping. When you're stopping by a stop sign, then you're not just stopping because you want to stop. So that's considered stopping. So that's why usually when a person stops, it's for a stop sign, that is considered stopping.
I'm just curious, like, when it's considered a private domain, like for our dorm, for example, there's like, it's like you go. pick
Yeah.
one
I know
bathroom.
the building. You
so
go
there's,
up the
like,
steps.
And into the yard of the fence. So what point are we in the private domain of the?
Very good question. So for sure, when you come up the steps and you're on the big porch over there, that's for sure a private domain. The steps could also be, if once you come to the steps that are elevated 40 inches off the ground, if you have, let's say you have a lot of steps.
Yeah.
Let's say it's not like that. I think you have 2 sets of steps under there. Can that be? It's not like going up 40 steps. So if you're going up, let's say you already went up like 40 inches. If you already went up 40 inches, so you're 40 inches elevated from ground level, then it's already considered a private domain.
Okay, but once you come in like the little, like the yard and the gate, it's still public
The
domain,
yard,
like
you
from
go up,
the street,
a few steps.
no, it's all like same level. We have like a little.
All
yard,
right, you don't
there's
have,
a
it's
little-
there's only 1 set of steps, the steps that are closer to, okay, first it's just the yard.
Yeah,
and then you go up the
And
steps,
then
right?
there's like a little gate, I mean, probably only a couple inches around the yard, I think, yeah, there
Is it gated in?
Oh, no, it's bushes, it's not.
It's
gated.
not right, it's bushes. No, so that's, no.
So if there was a gate, it would be. considered
If there was a
private.
gate, proper gate, it would be a private domain, but there's no gate, so it's still part of the public domain. Just because it's private property,
Yeah, then-
but it's still public domain.
so the steps are lower than 40 inches, we're in the public domain.
Right, if, let's say, I don't think there's so many steps there.
No, like
I
4.
think it's just about 40 inches already, you're ready in the porch already.
Okay,
Yes, but if it was a lot of steps, and once you get 40 inches off the ground, it
okay.
becomes a private domain.
Thank you.
You have questions? Okay. Shabbos, everyone.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Drop it off and then come again. Thank you, we're looking forward. Bye.
Stacy, thank you for asking a question about the glasses.
This lab, they do Teves, they're shot, add questions, next thing you know, the whole year is done. Oh my gosh. I'm just going very fast. This girl, like, we have to retype this section off, oh, thank God, you already typed that. Yeah. She put these questions in H, but they really go with I. Have a party, all them gather around, they people will do it. And you have to.